started. First of all, thank you guys so much for joining, and thank you for all the listeners for joining us tonight as well. It's truly a pleasure to have everyone on board: Calvin, Max, Richard, and Valorant.
Valerian,
So,
yes.
yes. So to start with, let's have all the guests to have a little bit self-introduction. Tell us a bit about you and your project. Shall we start with our guest, Max?
Sure, sounds good. So got into crypto back in late 2011, early 2012. I've always found blockchain security consensus protocols super fascinating. And one of the first projects I did in crypto was basically how to inherit Bitcoin security in an entirely decentralized way. So we saw a lot of projects back in like 2012, 2013. We saw Namecoin try to adopt merge mining and some of the issues you have with that from a both adoption perspective of getting Bitcoin miners to onboard and share hash rate, but also the reality of inheriting hash rate versus inheriting security and the difference between those. And so worked on building out the proof of proof protocol, which is a way to inherit that Bitcoin security in an entirely permissionless way where you get all of Bitcoin's true security without needing Bitcoin miners to participate in your protocol at all. And in order to attack the protocol, you actually need to 51% attack Bitcoin. So tying that chain's consensus to Bitcoin itself versus just borrowing and inheriting that hash rate. And then over the years found, continued to develop work on that technology. And now we're excited with Hemi to bring that tech into the Ethereum ecosystem. And one of the other things, I've always been a passionate supporter of Bitcoin. And so one of the other things we're working on with Hemi is called HVM, or the Hemi virtual machine, which is a way to make Bitcoin programmability better than we've seen with other approaches like the Bitcoin header relay system, where you get that granular direct access and smart contracts to the state of Bitcoin inside the EVM, instead of needing to trust relayers or oracles and not being able to authenticate some of the data like the Bitcoin UTXO table that you need to look at for certain interoperability applications. So looking forward to chatting about all that technology that we're working on today. And that's about it from my side.
Yep, sounds good. Nice to meet you, Max. Next, can we have Richard? Is he able to speak now?
I think we've lost Richard.
I'm not seeing him in the.
Okay, how about now?
Yep. Hey guys, this is Richard Ma, CEO and founder of Quantstamp. So we've been really good friends with Hemi for years now, and just recently also did some audits for Hemi. So happy to support and share insights as well.
Great, short and sweet. Thank you, Richard. Next, can we have Valorant?
Yes, hi. So I work for Quantstamp. I arrived 2 years ago. I am an auditor there. And I had the opportunity to join the audit of the BTC tunnel for Hemi recently. So yeah, very happy to be in this space.
Great. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Valorant. Next, can we have Calvin?
Hello. Good to see everyone here. Excited to share more on, I guess, two teams that we've gotten to spend quite a bit of time in with over the many years of this space. So Impossible, as you guys know, is an accelerator early stage team working always with lots of projects. Here today with Hemi, of course, as one of our portfolio companies backed by much bigger names than us. I think everything's already in the links below. And obviously Quantstamp as a trusted auditor within the space that we've been able to see build stuff in many ecosystems overall. And excited to see now all of that coming together in one of our portfolio ecosystems for Hemi.
Really nice. Thank you, Calvin. All right, let's get started with today's discussion. Our topic today is on the reality of blockchain security. So first, can we have everyone to talk about the general opinion on security landscape of layer 1 and layer 2 blockchain? Maybe we can start with Richard and Valorant, as they are in the auditing firm. Richard, can we have you to speak first?
I think just three main thoughts on my side. One is, obviously it's currently like a pretty active market. It used to be a bull market before the Trump tariffs, but teams are really wanting to get to market, and that has a lot of implications on security because these teams have like deadlines they want to hit and product launches. The second point I think is just for Bitcoin. A lot of Bitcoin development is actually quite a bit more difficult compared to development on the Ethereum side. So it comes with like extra security considerations. I think probably Valerian can talk a bit more about that. Yeah, and then I would say the third probably security related thing is that now there are a lot of Ethereum L2s, and so in terms of like development, it's much easier now to get a lot of best practices for things like building bridges and choosing which tech stacks to use. So that's gotten a lot better over the last couple of years. But yeah, I guess Valerian want to add as well.
I totally agree with you. And yes, right now the knowledge in terms of security and in terms of audits as well is well more available than before. And then if your question is about layer 1 and layer 2 blockchain security, I would think about 3 dimensions. First is availability of data. It's obvious for layer 1, but not always for layer 2. Then also the integrity to make sure that once data is published, it cannot be updated. And the third one is for the security and who has access to make different types of actions. And we say that on the layer 1, it's decentralized, but on layer 2, sometimes you have some degrees of centralization. So I would say that these 3 dimensions would be a good start to define that security at the 2 levels.
I see. Thank you so much, Richard and Valerian. And can Max share with us your opinion, especially on the last part that Valerian mentioned? Layer 2 has a bit of centralization, considering that Hemi is a layer 2.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Valerian did a great job of covering kind of the evolving security landscape with L2s. When you look at L1s, they're a lot simpler systems. You don't have, technically you do have DA you have to worry about, but the L1 architecture generally makes that a non-issue, whereas L2s, you have to think through the DA, you have to think through platform upgradability, you have to think through native consensus, and there's a difference between decentralization, creating blocks, and then security for ensuring those blocks can't later be overwritten. And I think the L2 landscape as a whole is definitely moving towards ways to decentralize it. A lot of L2s are still in a centralized sequencer model, and that's something that with Hemi we have, and as part of the node sale that we're currently doing, and a lot of the work we're doing on the consensus side, inheriting Bitcoin security gives us the ability to securely decentralize that sequencing layer and use liveness preserving consensus protocols like Ethereum style proof of stake systems versus having to rely on something that's more centralized, like a delegated proof of stake system or things of that like. And I think one of the challenges we had with Hemi was figuring out how to balance, because we're combining stuff from the Bitcoin landscape, the Ethereum landscape, and figuring out how we were going to make those pieces work together in a way that was productive and value adding instead of just slapping an EVM on top of Bitcoin. And a lot of that goes into the security discussion of what do you use for DA? Do you use Bitcoin or Ethereum? We ultimately went with Ethereum on the DA side because from a scalability perspective, Ethereum just has a much stronger offering than trying to use Bitcoin DA natively and fit into effectively 4 megabyte blocks with everyone else who's competing for that space, and then pull in the Bitcoin security instead of from the DA side. do that at the consensus side with proof of proof and basically achieving Bitcoin finality on the chain state that is published through Ethereum DA. So definitely something that's, you have to design that system well and really think through all the implications of how your DA system works with your sequencing system, how that sequencing works from a intermediate consensus and long-term consensus perspective. So it's definitely a fun challenge building these types of technologies.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing, Max. Next, can we have Kelvin? Can you share with us your opinion on this question?
Yeah, obviously, these two guys have already covered a lot of it, but I think one of the things that when we used to research into the stability and the security of new blockchains at Binance, when we're considering one of the things that matters a lot is just the experience of being able to bridge in and out of these chains, as well as obviously try to maintain as much interoperability as well with others. So I think we always kind of see that trade-off between centralization and the tech stacks that we have seen a lot of, whether it's the Arbitrum, Optimism, ZK Sync side of things, we've seen all of their stacks kind of roll out. And what I'm really excited to see moving forward is to see BTC exist in more of these ecosystems as a collateral. And I think that this is one of the things I'm quite excited about for Hemi, because I think the reality is that as we live in such a proof of stake world in the current days, I think that the utility of having all types of collateral types be relevant in blockchains that we're interested in is definitely a next step forward, because unfortunately, I don't think we can consider this only on the pure tech side. It has to be robust from an economic side, which I'm sure Max will share more later. And overall, it's something that security is no longer black and white. And I feel like our Quantstamp guests here are definitely always run into the needing to protect against the headaches of any kinds of economic attacks as well. So I think that we'll definitely have more time to talk about this one on the economic side as well moving forward.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much for sharing, Calvin. As Max mentioned before, Hemi uses proof of proof network. So what would the problems in conventional proof of stake network, and how does the proof of proof address those problems? And maybe we can have Valerian and Richard share with us what's their observation on the problems within the proof of stake network.
Yeah, absolutely. So proof of stake, there's a lot of different flavors of it, and all of them have different trade-offs between what we call liveness and finality or security, in a sense, where you can build a system that can't fork, but that system, if it does reach a scenario where there is essentially a validator split or a disagreement, the network halts. And so when you're designing consensus protocols in the proof of stake world, you have to think through the trade-offs between that liveness and security. And a lot of times, we've seen Ethereum adopt a very liveness preserving approach to, allowing the chain to reorg, but trying to enforce a lot of the desired behavior correctly with economics, which has overall worked very well. But the shortcoming of proof of stake is fundamentally of something called weak subjectivity. And so when you're a new node joining the network and syncing with the network, you're being told, hey, these blocks are part of the canonical chain. And you can validate that, okay, starting from the genesis, every block that got added to the chain was created by somebody who, based on that consensus protocol, was permitted to create that block at that point in time. But because proof of stake, when you look at proof of work on Bitcoin, if you want to reorganize a proof of work chain, you have to go and use the equivalent amount of computational power that originally built the regular chain to go and create this alternate chain. And in proof of stake, you don't need to do that as a proof of stake validator. You can create 2 or 3 or 10 blocks at the same height that are all valid in their own context, but obviously conflict with each other on the network. And so from a consensus security perspective, there's something called the nothing at stake attack, which is where you can go and you can get basically keys from old validators who used to be active 6 months or a year ago. And you can use those to create a valid alternate looking chain. And to anyone new joining the network, they can't differentiate between the original canonical chain that everyone currently on the network believes is valid versus this new chain that was created with old validator keys. And from a consensus perspective, looks equally as valid and has as much stake weight as the legitimate chain. And so one of the end results of that is, as a consensus protocol design, you have to basically build in, either checkpointing systems or some sort of system for nodes to, bootstrap in a way that's semi-trusted, so that they're hearing from the overall consensus of the current active nodes on the network what really is the legitimate chain versus what is a long-range reorg that is not accepted by the majority of consensus. And so there's all kinds of edge cases you have to worry about with actually, if you enforce rules around that, like, okay, the chain can't, no node will allow a reorg that's longer than a day or a week or a month. Well, then you can get into chain split scenarios, because the way blocks propagate on a peer-to-peer network, it's flood fill, and not all nodes hear about all information at the same time. So introducing those sorts of rules as a band-aid ends up creating network fracturing attacks that you have to think through. And the benefit of proof of proof is that it can layer on top of proof of stake and give it essentially strong subjectivity by using Bitcoin. And so now, in order to create that alternate proof of stake fork, you would have to go and retroactively insert proofs of that alternate chain into Bitcoin. And to do so, you would have to 51% attack Bitcoin. So it lets proof of stake shine where it's great, which is being very efficient, very easy to bootstrap for new ecosystems, being able to have faster and more consistent block timing. But it reinforces that with Bitcoin's proof of work. So you solve that weak subjectivity issue. Those long-range reorgs aren't possible. And ultimately, anything on a network like Hemi that's secured with proof of proof, or other chains in the future in our L3 ecosystem that inherit Bitcoin security through Hemi, they all reach Bitcoin finality. And so all of those issues with weak subjectivity, with bootstrapping problems, with being able to do long-range attacks, those all go away because of that additional Bitcoin anchoring layer that we're adding in.
I see. Thank you for sharing, Max. And can we have Richard and Valorant to follow up with that question?
Yeah. And I think maybe to do like the proof of proof in a nutshell, the idea is to leverage the existing Bitcoin miners and basically to give them Hemi transaction fees. So like, they can opt in to participating, but they don't have to. But maybe for a lot of miners, this would be like a really attractive additional incentive. And then I think from the Hemi perspective, it's also really interesting because for a long time, I think the Bitcoin community, it's been very kind of insulated and hardened against technical change. So today it's very hard to kind of have Bitcoin innovation by itself. But this is a way to like incorporate all the like newest technology while having a really clear and easy way to work with Bitcoin POW miners. So I think in that way it's kind of like bringing a lot of more like Bitcoin users into this like really new innovative network. Yeah, so that's sort of, I guess, what I wanted to add to that. And out of all the designs I've seen for L2s that want to partly build on top of Bitcoin, Hemi is by far the best design that I've seen. So yeah.
Really nice. Do you have anything to add up, Valorant, on that?
No, I just want to highlight that the description of the risk was very, very good, very clear. Just if I take some distance and I talk about POS protocols in general, I would say that you need positive incentives for people and actors to act for the protocol, and also negative incentives if they act against the protocol. And you need this to have some value, because if not, even if you don't have a lot of power to influence the network, you can still temporarily get enough to impact the network as you want. And yes, this would be my description of POS from a very abstract vision or perspective.
And also, you bring up a good point on the incentive side. One of the issues with proof of stake is because everything is native to the chain's own state machine. So basically, the current state of validators are the ones who accept new data into the chain that then creates the next state and allows new validators in. So unlike Bitcoin proof of work, where somebody owns 51% of the hashing power at one point in time, somebody else could go and buy more ASICs and put them in a data center and start competing with them. With proof of stake, you get this issue where somebody controls 51% of the staking power. They can take perpetual control over that protocol because they can block new validators from getting in. They can censor existing validators and even cause them to get slashed for what appears to the protocol to be an inactivity leak, even though it's a censorship attack. And that validator, they can basically pare down their stake weight and run the network perpetually with nominal value at risk. And so obviously there's the kind of external disincentives of, if you attack a network and do censorship attacks, the value of that token is probably going to go down. And, as a staker with a lot of consensus power, you obviously have a vested interest in that token's value not decreasing. And so that you have that sort of indirect disincentive, but for looking at protocols, not only from the direct economic incentives of, stakers and their bag of tokens that they want to maintain value in. When you look at attacks where maybe someone is compromising validator keys, we're seeing some centralization with staking with, centralized exchanges, for example, and offering staking programs. And so if somebody were able to compromise a few of those large, staking as a service providers, that attacker doesn't have the same disincentives because it's not their token. So if they were, say, a state actor or whatever, they could go and attack the network with that consensus power. They're not taking on that disincentive because they're not their tokens, and they're able to execute some of those perpetual consensus control attacks. And one of the cool things with not only on the proof of proof side with leveraging Bitcoin, but just L2s in general, is you do inherit anti-censorship abilities from the L1 you're building on. And so when you deploy proof of stake networks on, say, either Bitcoin or Ethereum, or both in the case of Hemi, you can do stuff where that sort of validator takeover attack is not possible, because you can still have validator entries occur through transactions that are offloaded to the L1s. You can inherit the L1's underlying anti-censorship abilities to prevent sequencers on your L2's proof of stake consensus protocol from being able to exert those sorts of censorship attacks.
I see. Thank you so much, Max and Valerian. And moving on to our next question, why are audits so important? This question is actually perfect for today's AMA because we have 3 points of view, one coming from the audit firm, of course, Quantstamp, other one coming from Hemi, the project side, and maybe Impossible Finance. Kelvin, you can represent in the investor side. So can we have Max to share with us why to a project, why are audits so important?
Yeah, for sure. Building decentralized applications, there's a lot of complication. They're very complicated things, and they have to work perfectly from day one. Like if you deploy a smart contract that has one minor issue here or there, and it can kill the entire protocol. And so having an auditing firm that goes through with a fine-tooth comb, they understand all of the intricacies of not only what's written in Solidity, but how is that going to work in the EVM. Like one of the things I was really impressed with Quantstamp in particular was they really dived into beyond just the Solidity layer. So understanding how our HVM system works for some of the contracts they were auditing that leverage HVM on our side, understanding the security properties of those, what guarantees you have for data, Bitcoin data in our HVM system being updated and made aware to those smart contracts, what sort of censorship type attack scenarios would be possible that would prevent or delay that Bitcoin information from getting into HVM and being available. And so really you need, when you work with an auditing firm, especially for something like this that's using new ways of interoperating with Bitcoin, with HVM programmability in Bitcoin Kit, having an auditor who goes that extra level and like really dives into the underlying mechanics of the system and understands it from an economics perspective, technical perspective, code quality, best practices, having that kind of holistic understanding of what you're doing, but also how the ecosystem overall works is just incredibly important.
Maybe I'll jump in as well. I think because we obviously do some of the investment side of things as well as trying to help on the early stage sides of projects. I think we've seen firsthand as well, Quantstamp going above and beyond in terms of the depth, as Max hinted at, of not going at just the code level, but really trying to help in more ways than one. I think especially for earlier stage projects, especially the ones that haven't had anything go live on mainnet before, I think a lot of the best practices is something that I've also noticed that Quantstamp has spent time to explain to teammates in our own portfolio of, what are some of the do's and don'ts. In some of our other ecosystems that we've been a part of, like Beam, for example, or SoFun, I think a lot of the core farming contracts that hold hundreds of millions of TVL were teams that had their contracts also reviewed by the Quantstamp team. And I think that is one of the biggest testaments of time over these years, that Quantstamp contracts have held millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of TVL over these years. So it's something, obviously, always knocking on wood, but something that I'm proud to see, whenever I do see a project team working with guys that I know have spent enough time in this space. And I think that those best practices and general security hygiene, as Max hinted at, is something that's beyond just the face level of what is the code.
I see. Thank you, Calvin. Last but not least, can we have Richard and Valorant to share with us?
Sure. Really appreciate the kind words. I think, when we've been, doing audits all these years, there's very much like a human side to it, because, from, for example, for Hemi, we have like very good friends that work there and, help to start the company. So often it's not just doing the audit. We're really trying to, keep an eye out for the team, and we want to make sure that Hemi has a really great launch. So whenever we do these audits, that's really always the approach. And depending on what we see, we can then figure out where we can help out more. But yeah, it's been like a really great experience. And so yeah, I guess Valerian, any thoughts there?
I totally agree with you. And for me, so I had the opportunity to join an audit with Hemi, and first I really liked the collaboration with the team. So we are sharing some ideas, we are asking if some attack scenario were valid, and the team was very responsive and tried to help us as much as they could. And the second thing I really liked is to audit this type of new projects who are trying to innovate and to push the boundaries. So this was very interesting. And also, I just wanted to highlight that the audit first, we think it's about security, but there is something else. It's about checking if the code is doing what the team wants. And sometimes we don't really know, or the team doesn't say 100% what they want to do. And our job as well is to say, okay, this code is doing this. Are you aware of this? Is it what you want to do? And at the end of the audit, we make sure first that the code is doing exactly what the team wants, and then we don't audit our interpretations, but we make sure that we are sure about what the client wants to do, and then we audit the security part of what they want to do. I just wanted to add this.
Yeah, it's a good clarification. It's not just does the code do what the code does and are there clear issues, but does that fit into what the team thinks the code does, how they want it to work, how they want this component to fit into the overall system. And so it's not just an audit of code, but an audit of ideas and that thinking. That's really important.
Yes. And I think we heard some auditing results coming from Quantstamp as well. So we want to know more about what the notable strength of Hemi as compared to other Bitcoin layer 2. Maybe we can have Richard answer this first.
I think I think one of the notable strength was a lot of thinking went into Hemi, like even before the project was named. I know just from talking to Matt Rozak that a lot of the ideas that went into Hemi, it's kind of been years in the making before the project had a name. And that is very different from most of the other Bitcoin L2s that have emerged. Because a lot of the Bitcoin L2s that have emerged, it came out of this kind of Bitcoin L2 hype period. So the designs that were built there, they had kind of less long-term thinking behind it. I think this is kind of a very special feature of the Hemi engineering team. Yes, Valerian, any thoughts there?
Yes, so when we did this audit, we shared with my colleagues the opinion that the Hemi team has a very good knowledge in terms of engineering skills, but also in terms of economical understanding of what they want to do, and they are using different blockchain networks, and they understood the consideration for each when you want to integrate with each of these networks. And we also considered that it's very well how to say architectured. I don't know if we can say it in English, but it's clearly done by software engineers, and it was very interesting to audit this.
I see. Thank you so much. All right, so we heard the result coming from the auditing firm. Now, can we have Max to share with us what are the notable strengths of Hemi?
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's a couple components. So one of the first things is this is the Bitcoin tunnel system that Quantstamp audited. It is the first non demo toy application that's actually using our HVM technology. And so working with Quantstamp, it was really great to be able to have them, like I kind of previously mentioned, but I'll talk in a bit more detail, really understanding how that HVM system works. And we're really excited to put that Bitcoin tunnel system out there, to make it live and useful in mainnet for tunneling, or if you're not familiar with our term tunneling, it's basically bridging Bitcoin assets over to the Hemi network and being able to use them as a ERC20 on Hemi. But we're also excited to put that out there as a example of how to use this new interoperability technology we're building with Bitcoin. And one of the cool things is that working with Quantstamp for walking through this Bitcoin tunnel and being able to audit it and understand all the components and how HVM fits in, the security considerations of the cross-chain stuff like Valerian was talking about, being able to say, okay, you're on an Ethereum L2 that has this Bitcoin data incorporated through this block derivation protocol, and that's going to update HVM state in this way. And if this were to happen, this data could get delayed in this way. And so, accounting for that in the smart contract and really having that broad multi-network understanding So yeah, excited to get the Bitcoin tunnel contract out there and open sourced as that first like real world application that's using HVM, but also excited that Quantstamp now has that understanding and knowledge of HVM, and we can bring other projects that want to build on that technology to them and say, hey, these guys understand the system, they've dived in deep, they've audited projects that are using this HVM tech before, and so they can look at what you're trying to do with HVM for your non-custodial DEX or your non-custodial staking system or your Bitcoin MEV marketplace or whatever you want to build with this technology. We now have an auditing firm that has that deep knowledge of how this additional technology we're building really works, and it's going to make it a lot easier for people to build on top of that technology, having an auditing firm that really understands that the core features that we're adding to Hemi on that Bitcoin side. So that's another nice side effect of going through this audit, is really getting a auditing partner who understands that, and we can bring other projects to using this tech that they know how to look at. They understand the new componentry that they're leveraging.
Totally. Thank you so much for sharing, Max. Last, can we have Calvin to share with us? Of course, Impossible Finance as a launchpad, you've seen a lot of projects. So when you look at Hemi as a project, what's the most noticeable quality or feature that caught your eyes?
Yeah, I think as Richard mentioned earlier, one of the most valuable things is that this has been cooking for a long time. I think obviously the team, Max, you yourself in the intro mentioned how early you guys all came into the space. So I think for us, it's rare to see, to be honest, people that have been in the space as long as Richard or Max. So I'm very lucky to have both of them here today. But I think at a builder level, I think the hardest part is that historically speaking, BTC and ETH camps haven't always been the closest of friends. And I think that one of the most interesting things is that Max and the rest of the team have spent a lot of time to try to not just the actual bridge, but culturally bridge both the BTC and the EVM groups. And I think that that's something that, to be honest, the space still doesn't have enough of. I think there's still too many people that are very factionalized in the way that they think about building stuff, where in reality, I think we need to actually be trying to bring liquidity and bring users and bring projects all together. So for me, I think that's one of the things that from the initial core concept to now executing that and trying to build up some of the projects that are porting over to Hemi now, I think that ethos is starting to pay out.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, Calvin. Next, so speaking of security, any security note for the POP miners? Maybe we can have Max to share with us more on this.
Yeah, so just to quickly describe how proof of proof works, basically anyone can join as a POP miner and basically take blockchain state data from Hemi, publish that to Bitcoin, and then they get rewarded by the Hemi protocol for incorporating Hemi consensus information into the Bitcoin chain. And so compared to other approaches like merge mining, you don't need Bitcoin miners to adopt your protocol, but they still benefit from it. So we're basically taking part of Hemi's economic value and we're giving that to Bitcoin miners in the form of Bitcoin transaction fees. And then users are facilitating that economic exchange. So bringing economic value from Hemi to Bitcoin miners, they're doing that, paying those Bitcoin transaction fees to publish Hemi data to Bitcoin. And then the Hemi protocol is getting the benefit of inheriting that Bitcoin finality from those publications. So it's a nice symbiotic relationship that Bitcoin miners benefit, the Hemi protocol benefits. Looking longer term, it's not just about the Hemi L2, but it's about being able to create an entire ecosystem on top of Hemi of L3s that can go and do specific things, and they can optimize for specific use cases. You could have an L3 that, say, optimizes for high throughput on-chain AI, or one that optimizes in maybe interoperability with another ecosystem like the Solana ecosystem, or it's optimized for gaming and you need high throughput and maybe sequencer decentralization isn't as important, or maybe you want to launch a L3 that uses proof of work. And so the cool thing is with the way that we've architected proof of proof is it gives you that flexibility. It's not tying your block creation, your sequencing protocol to that eventual Bitcoin security inheritance. It's additive and separated into two layers. So you have the ability to create blocks in whatever way you want, whatever consensus protocol or hybrid consensus protocols you want to use, if proof of stake, proof of work, hybrid, whatever. But you can always reinforce that with that Bitcoin finality. And so it gives us the optionality for, how people can build out L3s and what technologies they can leverage. And it also, in aggregate, basically makes Bitcoin more efficient, because we're taking the Bitcoin hash rate that normally secures, 3,000, 4,000 transactions every 10 minutes. And we're extending that to be able to secure potentially hundreds of thousands or millions of transactions across an entire ecosystem. So really trying to build that as a infrastructure that pays Bitcoin miners for the value they're creating, and then extracts additional value for the ecosystem from that existing mining that's going to happen on Bitcoin anyway. Might as well reuse that and secure this entire additional ecosystem with it.
True. Can we have Valorant to share with us what, as the auditing firm, what security node do we have for POP miners?
Sure. So I am not 100% aware of the POP miners, but the basic things I would say is first to follow the best practices when you have to manage your credentials or your private keys, this type of things. Then maybe it's better to isolate your device. If you install this POP miner and you do on the same laptop you download stuff from the internet, your day-to-day activities, maybe it's not the best thing to do. And I'm pretty sure that Hemi will have on their documentation a list of security considerations or security checklist for the miners if they want to be part of this ecosystem here.
Yeah, and just to clarify also, Quantstamp, their auditing was around primarily the Bitcoin tunnel contracts. And so they had to think through proof of proof from like a consensus protocol perspective and how Bitcoin finality interacts with the function of the Bitcoin tunnel. But they weren't involved in the auditing of the actual pop mining code that like end users would run to do those publications. So they're more on the consensus side, and how does pop, how does HVM, how do all those components build into the operation of this on-chain Bitcoin tunnel system that they were involved in the auditing of. So looking forward to get Quantstamp more involved in other parts of the protocol too, and we have other on-chain applications that we're either developing or going to be incentivizing third parties to develop that they would be auditing on that side, but they haven't been involved in the pop mining, like local security. How do you secure a private key for a pop miner side? That's been outside of the scope of the work that they've been doing with Hemi.
Understood. Thank you for the explanation, Max. And we understand the deep collaboration between Quantstamp and Hemi. So the questions for Richard or Valorant, what was the collaboration history between Quantstamp and Impossible Finance? And if there was, how will it expand in 2025? Maybe we can have Richard take this first. Oh, looks like Richard just dropped. So Valorant, you're on.
I'm sorry, but let's wait for Richard because I am not aware of this. I am just the auditor. I don't do the commercial stuff, so I don't know.
I see. But thank you so much. Maybe we will let Calvin take over this question. So what was the collaboration history between Quantstamp and Impossible Finance, and how will it expand in 2025?
Yeah, I think Quantstamp's already audited a lot of the contracts across many people's portfolios, not just ours. But obviously with Hemi upcoming, we'll have even more this year as well. And I'm sure that you guys are doing stuff for some of the products that are deploying on Hemi. So Max, excited for mainnet, and I think the ball is in your court to get mainnet ready so that we have more things to talk about moving forward on this one.
Yep, looking forward to it. It's going to be an exciting few weeks for sure.
Yes. All right, I think that's all the question we have today. So is there any thing more you want to add on, or you want to share with us more? Maybe we can start with Max.
Yeah, already covered pretty much all the stuff about what Hemi is, what we're doing, but just as a sort of a call to action, if you're interested in building Bitcoin-aware applications, and maybe you've looked into it and you've encountered limitations of like Bitcoin header relay systems or the Oracle systems for relaying like UTXO data on chain. If you're interested in building those more bare metal applications that interact with Bitcoin at a core level, not just using a Bitcoin ERC20 representative in a DeFi project, we are working on a lot of developer bounties and grants. And so if you're interested in building any of those technologies, please reach out. We'd love to talk with you. And we have a set of like 4 or 5 different ideas we're incubating that we think could really benefit from HVM. And so some of those we'll be building internally, but some of those we'd love to partner with other people as well to try to build those out. And of course, we have Quantstamp as a partner to help audit all those types of projects, and they have that background in HVM. And yeah, looking forward to seeing what the next 3 to 6 months of getting people to start using HVM in their applications and designing those more trustless, non-custodial Bitcoin applications looks like.
Definitely. Very excited to see what Hemi can bring us in the near future. So next, can we have Richard to share with us what more topic do you want to cover?
Yeah, I think that's very excited to see how the Bitcoin ecosystem embraces Hemi. I think when it launches, it's gonna be pretty new and innovative, and yeah, I'm looking forward to having a front seat and seeing that happen. So, yeah.
Great. Just continue the nice collaboration. Well, can we have Valorant too? Is there anything you want to add on?
No, same here. I am pretty excited to see the next steps in the Hemi adventure. So good luck to you.
Great. Thank you. Last but not least, can we have Calvin to share with us some closing remark?
Yeah, I hope that 2025 is less of a meme year and more of a builder year. And I think in line with all the work that all of our guests here today, I think we're excited to see some of the fundamental work to many more late nights and early mornings with all of you guys. So excited on it.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you all the listeners for listening. If you enjoyed the AMA today, don't forget to follow all of us on our socials, Impossible Finance, Hemi, and Quantstamp. And I think that's it from all of us today. And then thank you. Have a nice day, and hope to see you guys soon. Thank you.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.